Hi everyone, and welcome back finally to campaign mode. It's the first one that we've done since the new year. Obviously last time we completed Ice Shelf Islands here, and we're going to pretend that we're doing it properly. These aren't unlocked, so we've got the choice of HappyCo Harbour or Biscayne Beach to complete next. I think I'd rather start with HappyCo Harbour. I'm going to struggle with both of these. I'm sure I did before, but I think, yeah, this is the way to go. So HappyCo Harbour Amusement Rides Division invites you to redevelop this disused industrial harbour into a star amusement park. The company plans to use this site to showcase new attractions and developments, so be sure guests don't get to see all those old industrial structures. And small print there that we won't read. The goals are to have at least 3 coasters in your park with an excitement rating of 50 or above. That's going to be pretty tight because I know this is a small map. Have a decoration rating of 80%, at least 600 guests in the park, and to complete the non-optional goals by the end of May Year 3. So let's dive in. Right, welcome to the HappyCo Harbour map then. Let's just put the game on pause for a sec so we can take a look at it. Obviously we've already seen the goals. I think the most difficult thing here is going to be the scenery, keeping the scenery covered up. Or rather keeping all the industrial stuff covered up. I don't know if I want to sort of have a continuation of this theme or do something different with it. I've really got no idea what I'm going to do for the theme of this one, which I think is why I've struggled to get started as much as I have. Yeah, because I really don't know what I'm doing with it. But I think we'll just start playing and see what happens. We've got this very small space of land to cram 3 coasters in, so I think that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But this bit is unlockable as well. So that's something to consider later on in the campaign. We're going to take a look at the rides then. So we've got a carousel, a car ride, and an observation tower, which I don't think I've seen that yet in the campaign playthrough. That might be quite fun to have in the middle of the park. The thrill rides we're looking at are a good selection there. Enterprise, go-karts, Gravitron, a launch drop tower, and a twister. We've got the steel coaster and the wooden coaster. I can't really see a wooden coaster fitting in this park, so probably won't do that, but the steel coaster's a good one. A mini monorail, which I don't think we've really got room for, and we probably won't do water rides in this one, but I'm not sure yet. The only thing that I think might work is sort of an amusement park type feel. Sort of thinking like Gruneland or something like that, where everything's crammed into a small space. So that's just an idea maybe that we can work with. It's could be coasters, I think, for the research. And yeah, so I'm just going to see what the loans, sorry. Right, yeah, so we've got a selection of loans because we only start with 20,000 in this one. But yeah, let's get into the first time lapse and see what we can come up with. And I'll see you all over there. Because I've been playing in challenge mode, the first thing I had to do was disable all mods, because obviously this campaign playthrough is in vanilla, so we didn't want mods enabled at all. Not even the construction anarchy and rotation anarchy that I've been using in challenge mode. So once that's done, I started working on the park, and I just stuck in a couple of rides to get started with. So we went with the observation tower bang in the middle of the park, which I think would give some really nice views and sort of give us an idea of how much space that we've got to work with here as well. And then I got cracking on with the first coaster for the park, so we didn't really have much choice of coasters, and I thought the only one we could fit in would be the steel coaster, and it would have to be a launched one, I think, to give it enough space. So I keep this layout as compact as I possibly can so that it just all fits within this corner here, because we've got 2 more coasters that we need to pack into the park somehow as well. We can obviously buy land on the other side at some point and build on that if need be, but hopefully we'll be able to contain everything in this portion of the map, but we'll see how that goes. I'd sort of completed a layout and then realised that we can't actually build, we can't do anything with the terrain, so that big curved tunnel had to go because it looks horrendous like that, and it'd be quite hard to cover up. What I also had planned for this was that it was going to be on a raised section of the park, so there's a bit of terrain difference, and we're just going to build that all up with just roof pieces and build basically another sort of big slab of concrete across where this coaster is, that's raised off the ground, and it has sections that go underground and integrate with the path work and stuff like that. So there's a good bit of I always forget how to say this. There's always some good sort of interaction with the path work and everything like that. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with the layout, although we do have to go back later on and tweak it because it wasn't the stats changed when guests started riding it. When we opened it, for some reason different to the test results, which was rather frustrating. And no one was riding it and no one would pay £12 for it. I think at one point it was a bit too intense, so I do go back and sort that out later. Just using some brick walls here then to sort of raise this section off the ground, and I quite like the way that's looking. We are sort of a bit inspired by Gruneland for this park, like I mentioned in the intro. That was a vague idea that I sort of had, and I thought that's what I'll sort of roll with, but very, very loosely themed on that idea of just cramming as many rides as possible into this small sort of space with loads of water around it, which, yeah, I think that's a really, really cool park. I'd love to go and visit that and actually see how they pull it off in real life, because they really do cram some coasters into that small space. So the guests' satisfaction levels were quite low, so I had to start working a bit on some shops and some necessities for the guests. So what I ended up doing is starting this building for the food stalls, and this is just based on a very rough idea of some sort of Swedish architecture that I had googled. Is probably not particularly accurate at all, but it doesn't really have to represent anything. It just has to sort of look quite good in this setting. It just has to sort of suit the style of the park, I guess. This is probably the more fancy looking architecture that I build. Everything after this is a little bit more sort of amusement park-esque, a little more sort of tacky and cheap looking, which is something that I'm a little bit concerned about, because I think that will probably be the theme of the next park as well, because that's going to be on the beach, in Biscay Beach. So yeah, we're going to have to just find some good variations of that type of theming, but you'll see what I mean in a minute when we get on to that section. Firstly, we're just completing this building using the steampunk roofs, because I think they look really cool. Maybe this has a slightly steampunk-esque feel to it with the colour scheme and the pieces I'm using. That wasn't at all what I was going for, but I think it could represent a number of themes really. This one we don't have to pigeonhole it into anything in particular. And then I just worked on this plaza a bit, putting some seating and some lampposts in and everything like that the guests need to be content in the park. And then you can see this building is where I start going a little more cheap and amusement parky, something that you might get at a pleasure beach type park, I guess. And this is actually ripped off by a little look outside Gruneland on Google Maps, just to look at some of their architecture. And there's a building this is sort of inspired by just some of the little decor and detailing that I put on this building. And yeah, I think it works quite well, using a couple of different sort of roof pieces there as well to give some variation, and a spire on the front to sort of represent that this is the entrance building to the park. And yeah, you can see now exactly what I mean by that amusement park style feel, with the sort of green poles and little gold bits of decoration. Quite cheap looking, but quite classic, I think, quite authentic. Yeah, I kind of like this style, and it's something different to what we've been doing before with the more heavily fancy themed parks. I don't think we can go too crazy with the theming in this one, just because of the style of park that it is, but we do have to cover up the ugly, well, not the ugly, I think they look quite good, but the bad decoration harbour stuff that the guests don't like. You did see me there just jump to the decoration view briefly just before, and it sort of shows red and pink on the bits of path where the guests aren't happy with the bad scenery rating. Jumping forward then, so we've put in an information kiosk. We already had one, but I decided I want to put it in the middle there because that plaza was looking a bit empty, and I just give it a concrete circular roof and some pillars. I was trying to do something a little bit more ambitious with it, but I couldn't do it with the pieces I was looking for. But yeah, that's fine. So we get a carousel in as well. Got to have a carousel in your park. And yeah, again, I probably won't be giving this one a cover. It's just something I'm not too good at. So we're just going to leave that one as it is. I think that looks fine. We've also got a Gravitron in there. I think I put that in earlier but forgot to mention it, or didn't mention it, or whatever. So we've got a fairly good selection of rides to start with. And what we're going to do now is jump over to the live portion and see how the park's doing. Here we are then in HappyCo Harbour, and what we've got so far. So I'm happy with this plaza. I think it looks really good. And I think it's enclosed everything nicely, so you can see the decoration here is all green. The red part there, I'm guessing that's just a bit of a litter that needs to be picked up. If we put the janitor on it, hopefully he'll do it. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so far everything's green, pretty much. I think maybe we need 2 janitors now, just to keep things clean. Yeah, so from that point of view, we're doing fine. The guest rating is a little bit low. I think it's experiences and prices that cause the problem. With this steel coaster before, people weren't happy to pay for it, but now that seems to have settled itself. So it's got a 58 excitement and a 67 intensity. What I had to do in the end is slow this launch down because it's just going into all these elements too fast. And once the train's loaded full of people, it runs faster as well. So on the test mode, the stats were okay, but then the intensity was just a little bit too high once guests started riding it, and nobody would pay for it or go on it. So yeah, no one seems to be going on this observation tower for some reason. Doesn't seem very popular. Maybe it's because it's towards the back of the park at the moment. Same with the Gravitron. There's just not much over there to get people going in, and we haven't got that many people in the park yet because it's still early days. To make the optional goals, which you know I like to do, we're looking at May Year 3 for 600 guests. I think that will be the biggest challenge. We should be able to get the coasters in and everything. You can see that most of the front of the park is themed by this point. I just went with this really basic technique of making planters out of the brick walls and just placing some fake mud down and some bushes and foliage, using all different bright colours as well, because I think the colour schemes for some of the rides and the pathwork is quite dull, so I think these colours brighten it up quite a bit as well. And yeah, I think it's actually coming together a lot better than I thought it would. I wasn't particularly looking forward to doing this map, but yeah, so far I'm quite happy with it. So I think we're just going to crack on and see what we can do next. It might be a case of taking a loan out to build another coaster, because I think that would be the next step really. at the moment. We've got the flying coaster. Don't know if that's going to be a good one. I know we've got the Giga coaster. Neither of those are coasters that you can do a compact layout with. But I think I'm going to try something with a Giga coaster and just see how it works out. So I'll see you all in the next time lapse. First off then, I have to confess, I really struggled with this one. It took me probably about 5 or 6 attempts to actually complete the park goals, and I completely had to abandon all this that I did. So this is some footage from the first failed attempt, where I built this Giga coaster and built this huge station building above a big platform that it's all built on. And to be honest, I wasn't 100% happy with how it looked anyway. So in the end, I decided to ditch this attempt. Although I do quite like the way the coaster goes around that curve into that tunnel there. So that's something we might try and replicate later on in the playthrough when I finish off the park. Because I do go to build another Giga coaster. And this is my second attempt at the playthrough. This isn't a failed attempt, but I did have to keep saving the game and going back to autosaves and stuff like that. Because there was probably another 4 or 5 attempts that I had to meet the goals, which I failed by May Year 3. So that's just sort of how life is when you're trying to do the challenge goal, the non-optional goals in these playthroughs. And I don't have any footage from the other sort of failed attempts, and we do stick with this coaster layout in the end when I finally managed to get something to work that I was happy with. You can see there, I tried several different times to make a start on this layout and just kept restarting because you're just so stuck for space in this map. You really are limited to sort of how and where you can build. And I did find that limitation quite challenging building a Giga coaster. Obviously, they're meant to be huge layouts like Intimidator 305 or I don't know any other sort of tall Giga like that. I might have that completely wrong, by the way. My coaster knowledge is pretty pants, so yeah, correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, I guess. But yeah, this is a mini Giga coaster, so it's not really a Giga coaster at all. But it's got an exciting enough layout, and I did end up going back and increasing the height of the lift hill a bit to give it a bigger first drop, because the excitement rating didn't exceed 5.0, which I need for the campaign one of the campaign goals. The coasters all have to have a 5.0 excitement rating. So yeah, getting below that was pretty disappointing, to be honest. But yeah, I just went back anyway and increased the height a bit of that lift hill, and that made it hit the 5 excitement rating, which should normally be really easy to get. But when you have, like I say, limitations of space and you're trying to build these really compact layouts, it can be a bit more challenging. But I think we managed to get a fair, decent amount of track in, considering, the amount of space we had. And I really like how this layout looked in the end. I did prefer the diagonal lift hill that I went for before, but I feel that this one just utilises the space a lot better. We managed to get quite a lot more elements in, and a longer layout as well. You can see as well I placed a go-kart track underneath. That is shamelessly ripping off Silverette's playthrough of this map. But it's just too good an idea not to do. It just works so well, having the go-kart track run underneath the coaster track like that. And we're going to theme it all up to Formula 1 or racing or something like that. Maybe a bit sort of Ferrari world inspired. And yeah, that's going to be the theming for that one. But we will get back to that later. Now I'm just trying to meet the campaign goals as quickly as I can. So I chucked in a super tall drop tower there to get the high intense rides, so that guests don't complain there's no intense rides in the park, even though they carried on complaining about that anyway. And I built the third and final coaster for the park, Well, I say third and final. There's going to be a bit of a twist, which I'll show you later. But yeah, this is the third and final one that you will see, and that's a spinning coaster. Sorry, my brain just completely stopped working in for a sec. Probably because I moved on quite quickly to build a station for the Giga Coaster. I must have put that layout together really quickly for the spinning coaster, or not recorded it all or something, because that just whizzed past my screen and I've not had time to talk about it. But yeah, because of the excitement situation on the Giga Coaster, I put that spinning coaster together I made it quite an unrealistic layout and a more intense layout than it probably would be in real life. Some of the forces you get on that weren't too believable. But that's what I felt I had to go for to get that 5.0 excitement rating on the spinning coaster, and the types of coasters I wanted just weren't researching. But you can see here's when I finally met the goals for the campaign map. I made it look effortless in this time lapse because of what's been recorded, but trust me, it was hell. The guests are just so difficult in this park. They are so awkward, and getting to the 600 was my real challenge without people vandalising stuff and moaning about stuff. But yeah, I managed to get there in the end. So let's jump over into a live portion and see how the park is doing. Before we jump back into the park, I just wanted to show you how many different attempts that I had at completing this. You can see it says 6A, 6B, 6C here, so really we're looking like about 9 different attempts. There was a few times that I got close. I got like 550 guests in, but didn't quite do it in the time. So yeah, I mean, going for these optional goals really does sort of give myself a bit more of a challenge, but I kind of still want to carry on doing it now because we've come this far. So yeah, I don't want to quit now. So the top one here is called Goals Completed Park, so I'm just going to load that up and we'll get back into it. So here we are then in the HappyCo Harbour map. This is what it looks like now with the goals completed. Really, we haven't got that much left to do. We've just got sort of the theming for this area and this area to do, and then some polishing off over here, like this needs a station, and yeah, just filling in all the gaps really. You can see that I replaced the inverted swing with this ride here, this power surge ride. That's just because of what researched when I had to go back to previous autosaves, so that's what we ended up with. And I can now be transparent and admit what I've done and what you should never really do, which is to place this floorless coaster underground. The stats on it aren't even that good, but it's got high intensity rating, so it's kept some guests happy and made a bit of money and brought more guests into the park. We wouldn't have been able to meet the goals without it, unless, you know, I planned this out much better and just, yeah, if I did the whole thing better from the start, then we probably could have got away with it without doing that. But yeah, it's fine. We can just pretend it's not there because you can't see it. I don't know if it's cheating. I mean, you know, it is what it is, I guess. So yeah, really, I think we're just going to dive in now and complete the theming, and I can relax a bit knowing that I've met the goals. And yeah, we'll just play through and see how we get on with the rest of the park. Just before we get into that final time lapse, I wanted to show you guys the spinning coaster that I built. And yeah, you can see here on the stats that it was a 55.2 excitement rating, so it exceeded the 50.0 that we needed. And in order to do this, I had to make it much more intense than a real spinning coaster would be, because these are normally family coasters, family thrill coasters, but still, they wouldn't normally be this intense, using really sort of steep curves, drops, and I don't know, it's not that unrealistic. I just think some of the forces on it might be a bit more intense than you'd. Yeah, like here, that's that lateral really would pull you around that corner quite tight. But yeah, needs must. It works out really well for sort of final coaster for the park, or the final coaster that we can see. And it's got one of these lift hills as well, similar to the one on Cobra's Curse at Busch Gardens, which basically saves on so much space not having to have a lift hill, and yeah, was really useful to use in this map. So yeah, because I didn't show you much of the building of that on the time lapse, I thought we'd take a look at it now, even though I will do a sort of POV of the rides at the end as well. I just thought I'd show you that now. So without further ado, let's jump into the third and final time lapse. Welcome back to the build. We're going to start by working on the area around the Giga Coaster at the back of the park, and I decided that we're going to have a small Italian themed section here, just to tie in with the Ferrari themed coaster that we've got. Obviously it's a sort of racing coaster, but we're going to theme it to Ferrari and have a little Italian village here in front of it, and I think that all works out quite nicely with the whole sort of racing feel that we've got going on in the back of the park with the go-karts as well, and a little bit of inspiration from like Ferrari World or Ferrari Lands, that sort of thing. So you can see I put the Italian flag on that building, very cliche, just to show what it's supposed to be, in case you can't work that out by the architecture. And yeah, I have cut out quite a lot of parts of this build and just shown you sort of the main things that I'm putting in, because I wanted to keep the video down below 40 minutes. I think we should be able to do that with the editing that I've done here. So you can see some racing flags going in there then, just to add a very little bit of detail to the theme. This is only very loosely themed, this area. And then I had the fun job of putting the tyres around the go-kart track, which you can see obviously with the editing it looked like it took 5 seconds, but it actually took me about half an hour probably to do that. It's a bit of a nightmare. And then I sort of thought that the theming needs to be a little bit more than just one building, and obviously we're so stuck for the amount of space we've got in this park, so I ended up putting some buildings around the edge of the observation tower as well, just sort of for the queue line and entrance. So you can see me building those there, and they're only 1 tile wide, but I think they're fine, just to cover up a bit of the queue lines as well, and give a little bit of interest to the centre of this park as well. So the observation tower kind of becomes part of the Italian themed area as well, so I do recolour it as well to blend in a little bit nicer. And yeah, I wanted to try this trick using those little fantasy windows with the bit of roofing on them as actual roof pieces, and I think it worked out quite well for these sort of 1 tile wide buildings. I think that's quite a clever little trick to do. Obviously doesn't look perfect, but doing something like that in vanilla, I mean, it's good because you can place them anywhere, sort of on any grid space you want. So yeah, doing a little bit of fiddling about, you can get something looking quite good there, and that just makes the whole Italian themed area look a little bit more complete as well. But like I say, it's very basic theming. I haven't gone heavily detailed in this one, because to be honest, I just wanted to get the park done, and as long as it's looking fairly nice, then I'm happy with that. I've used the sinking in windows technique as well for some of the buildings there. And then we're going to move on to the Twister ride. I wanted to build a cover for it, so I took some more inspiration from Grunerland, looked at some reference images, and went for this sort of Victorian, little bit steampunk-esque building for the entrance to the queue line, and then we sort of copy some of those colours and textures over to the actual cover for the Twister ride as well. I really like that sort of dark brick colour effect that you can get using the brick walls in the game. Normally you would use them for steampunk. This does look a little bit steampunk, but it also looks a bit Victorian, and it also looks a bit like something you get in a park like Gruneland. The theming is very mismatched and all over the place in this park, and to be honest, that's sort of what I wanted to go for, because they're working with such a tight, or rather we're working with such a tight sort of space. All the themes are sort of on top of each other, but you can still see this distinct small themed areas as well. Not much to say really about the cover there. It's pretty generic, pretty standard. But I did copy that brick wall texture and the yellow pillars over as well to make it sort of match with the entrance building type thing we've got there. Not the entrance building for the park, but for the ride. And then we move on to the final themed area, I guess, because we needed a station for the steel coaster. So I give it this nice factory feel station. Had no idea what I was going for really here, just started placing pieces down. Thought this is going to look a bit more factory and industrial than the other areas, and then after putting some chain link fencing round the flat ride behind it and a sort of watchtower type thing, I decided that this could be a prison themed area. So we end up calling this coaster Prison Break. And I think that's quite fitting. I recolour the cars into that orange colour. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And yeah, put some chain link fencing up and some spotlights down and give it a very loose prison theme. Very easy to do, very quick and quite effective. Actually, not a theme that I've ever really thought of doing before, and not one that you see that often. And pretty easy to sort of replicate with the basic pieces in this game. So yeah, I'm quite glad that I chose to do that as something slightly different. You can see I'm jumping over here as well and doing some of the sort of back walls and stuff, just finishing off the wall that we've got going all the way around the park. And then you can see some of the prison style theming going in there. So just a basic watchtower with a spotlight on the top that would look pretty cool at night with the light sort of circling round. And then I placed little spotlights everywhere as well to make it look like they're sort of flashing on the ride and the buildings and stuff, and lighting up the area a bit better as well. For the actual coaster station, I use quite a lot of hanger pieces there because they're quite industrial. They work quite well for that style of theming, and yeah, just trying to make different stations to what I've done before at this point. You know, played the game that much and built that many different things, and it is difficult to try and get variety now, especially playing in vanilla. But you know, we work with it, do the best we can. And there you can see I'm putting in a little Ferrari sign for the Ferrari coaster, and yeah, I've just called it Ferrari. My name sort of ideas really aren't very original or creative, but they're absolutely fine, serve a purpose. So third and final coaster, then the spinning coaster, we're putting in a station, a very generic station. This is much more of an amusement park style feel. I've just given it some nice gardens around it, and I feel that with what we've gone for here, it would work perfectly in this type of park. And the name that I went for this one was the Waterside Whizzer, which is a terrible name. I do admit that now. I just couldn't think of anything else, and I wanted to give it a name and get it finished, basically. So yeah, you can see, but I do like the station for this one, and the nice sort of amusement park style theme, and again, not too heavily detailed either. So that's it for the build, and I'll see you over in the final live tour. There we go then. Here is the completed HappyCo Harbour map. And yeah, it's amazing what you can fit into quite a small footprint for a map in this game. We've got the free coasters, plenty of flat rides, everything that the guests need to be sort of content with the park. If we dive in then and have a little bit of a more detailed look at what we've built. So we've got this entrance area, largely inspired by Gruneland and that sort of amusement park. The poshest building in the park is probably this one, but still got that sort of classic Victorian feel, and this is very much the classic amusement park feel, which we've gone for. Got our 2 flat rides here, then the carousel and the twister. And then I think we'll just do the coasters in chronological order. So we'll start with Prison Break. Here's a look at the stats. We've got a very high and a high intensity now. I'm sure it wasn't high intensity before, but maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. Maybe the theming's made it more intense. But yeah, we'll just wait for this one to load up. It's only running on 1 train ops because just of the amount of space really that I had to work with. And I don't know, I suppose this one really could run on 2 trains. Maybe the track's a bit short or something. I'm sure the game didn't let me do it. But anyway, it's just a launch really into a series of inversions. So we've got like, I think that's called a bat wing or something like that, into a dive loop. And then a helix down into a corkscrew. And that's it really. World's shortest layout, but it has to be done, you know, in this campaign level. So yeah, that's Prison Break. I'm really happy with this prison themed station and the flat ride behind it as well. I think that all looks really nice together. Quick look at that at night as well, so you can see all the spotlights. And then let's take a look at the Ferrari, or the Italian sort of themed area, and the go-kart track. I really like the go-karts running underneath the coaster track. I think that would be some good interaction in real life. So we've got very high intensity and very high excitement and a medium intensity for this one. So let's take a ride on it. And yeah, slightly inspired by I-305, just a steep drop into a curve. A really overbanked turn. I did that. I probably made that more banked than I wanted it, just to try and get the excitement rating up. Because to start with, I was struggling even with the stats for this one. And yeah, just loads of helixes basically. This ride is so kind of hard to make it too exciting on the stats. Looks like we need some more janitors in the park. Maybe there's quite a lot of mess over here, although we do have quite a lot. Maybe they need to be trained up better or something. I don't know. And then in the middle here we've got our little Italian village with the observation tower in the middle, which I'm still happy with as a centerpiece for the park. I think that looks pretty cool. And then finally we have our spinning coaster, and not to forget to mention the drop tower in the corner here. Absolutely huge drop tower, this one. Again, I built that so high just because I wanted the intensity rating. Looks like we've just missed the first train on that one, so we'll try and catch the second one. So we've got the vertical lift hill, and that saves so much space. Really handy to have that element. And then straight into some really tight helixes, with quite a lot of banking on them and some much more intense turns than you'd get on a real spinning coaster, like I mentioned before. I just did it to get the stats up on this one. But I really like the interaction it's got with the station, the way it has a sort of helix and then under the station and then back out into this overbank turn. I think all that would look really cool from the path and the queue line as you walk through. And then it goes back into the station, and that's it. That is HappyCo Harbour. I had quite a lot of fun building this one. I had a few challenges along the way as well, but I'm really happy with the theming and the way everything turned out. I think this is probably the angle that the park looks best from. So we'll do something like that for the screenshot, the thumbnail. And I think now we will go back to the map and see what we've got next. There we go, so we've got our gold coin, but we had that already, you've seen that. So, in the next episode, Biscayne Beach, which I've got to be completely honest, I'm not looking forward to. But that's for next time to worry about, so I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, bye bye.